Cuban soldiers have killed 4 individuals and injured 6 others aboard a Florida-registered speedboat that reportedly opened fire first near Cuba's north coast. The incident occurred roughly 1 mile northeast of Cayo Falcons, according to Cuban officials. The shootout took place on Wednesday, with Cuban soldiers responding after the boat entered their territorial waters and allegedly fired upon them. 1 Cuban soldier was also injured in the exchange. U.S. officials are currently investigating whether any of the victims were American citizens or permanent residents. This development comes amid already tense relations between the United States and Cuba. Vice President J.D. Vance stated that the White House is closely monitoring the situation. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who was briefed on the incident, declined to speculate on its cause but noted it is highly unusual for such confrontations to occur in open waters. Florida Attorney General James Uthmire has instructed prosecutors to begin an investigation into the event. The shooting threatens to further escalate tensions between the two nations. This adds another layer of complexity to the current geopolitical climate surrounding Cuba and its relations with other countries. Bill and Hillary Clinton are scheduled to testify this week before a House investigation into Jeffrey Epstein's activities. The couple, who have faced years of scrutiny over their ties to the convicted sex offender, will appear Thursday and Friday as part of an ongoing probe that began after Epstein's death in 2019. The Clintons' appearance follows months of pressure from Congress, with Republicans threatening contempt of Congress charges if they did not comply with subpoenas. The investigation centers around Epstein's financial and personal relationships with political figures during the late 1990s and early 2000s when he was a known figure in Washington. Bill Clinton visited the White House several times while Epstein was involved in his philanthropic activities after leaving office. This includes flying on Epstein's private jet. The release of photos from Epstein's files last year reignited public interest in these connections, prompting further scrutiny and calls for transparency. The Clintons have used their extensive political experience to navigate this situation. Both Bill and Hillary Clinton are positioning themselves to defend their actions publicly. This emphasizes that they have nothing to hide while also questioning the motives behind the investigation. Hillary Clinton has been particularly vocal about her desire for the testimony to be conducted in public rather than privately, as initially planned by the House Oversight Committee. This week's testimonies highlight the Clintons' continued influence and resilience in Washington politics despite past controversies. As the hearings approach, all eyes will be on how these appearances might affect their legacy and future political involvement. Ukrainian and U.S. officials are set to hold talks in Geneva on Thursday, February 26, ahead of upcoming trilateral discussions with Russia aimed at resolving the ongoing conflict. The meeting will focus on details of a post-war recovery plan for Ukraine and preparations for future negotiations. Secretary Rustem Umerov from Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council is scheduled to meet with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, both representing the United States in these diplomatic efforts. This comes after several rounds of talks that have addressed security guarantees but have yet to produce significant breakthroughs on key issues. The U.S. State Department has expressed concerns over recent Ukrainian drone attacks on Russian territory, impacting discussions. Thursday's meeting is a crucial step toward fostering dialogue and setting the stage for potential trilateral meetings with Russia in the near future. Ukraine and the United States are working closely to address recovery plans and prisoner exchanges as part of their broader push towards peace negotiations. The situation remains fluid, with both sides continuing to engage in discussions aimed at resolving differences through diplomatic channels. Larry Summers, former U.S. Treasury Secretary and prominent economist, is stepping down from his teaching position at Harvard University following the release of documents linking him to Jeffrey Epstein. The resignation comes after hundreds of references to Summers appeared in recently released files related to the late sex offender. Summers' decision follows a pattern seen across academia, as high-profile figures distance themselves from any ties to Epstein. Nobel laureate Richard Axel, also facing scrutiny for his connections to Epstein, has announced plans to resign from Columbia University's Brain Institute at an unspecified time. These recent developments highlight the ongoing pressure on individuals and institutions tied even tangentially to controversial figures like Epstein. This reflects broader societal efforts to address past relationships and associations with such individuals. The situation remains under review as more academics and public figures may face similar scrutiny in the coming weeks. In a Senate confirmation hearing today on Capitol Hill, Dr. Casey Means faced tough questions about her stance on vaccines and other controversial health issues as she seeks to become the next U.S. Surgeon General. The nominee, an ally of Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., was grilled by Senator Bill Cassidy over past statements linking vaccines to autism, and that's despite scientific consensus refuting this claim. Democrats also questioned Dr. Means about her remarks on birth control pills and flu vaccine efficacy. While she supports vaccination in general, Dr. Means emphasized the need for personalized medical advice between patients and their doctors. Dr. Casey Means is a prominent figure in the MAHA movement, advocating for natural foods and reduced pesticide use. Today's hearing highlights ongoing debates over public health policies and the influence of alternative wellness practices on healthcare decisions. Republican support likely ensures her nomination will succeed despite criticism from some Democrats. The situation remains under review as officials continue to weigh Dr. Means' qualifications and viewpoints in light of public health concerns. In response to the State of the Union address on February 25, 2026, National Border Patrol Council President Paul Perez defended the Trump administration's immigration policies during a public speech. According to recent NBC News polling, 49% of Americans strongly disapprove of how President Trump has handled border security and immigration. This marks a significant increase from last April. Perez attended the State of the Union as a guest of Texas Senator John Cornyn and addressed ongoing concerns about operational impacts stemming from the partial government shutdown that has affected Department of Homeland Security funding. He emphasized that the Border Patrol is facing challenges due to this shutdown, impacting everything from border security operations to FEMA capabilities. This asked about enforcement tactics such as mask requirements for federal agents. Perez explained that masks are crucial for protecting officers who have faced targeted harassment and online threats. The union leader also argued against proposed changes like requiring judicial warrants instead of administrative ones for arrests, stating it would severely impede law enforcement efforts. As the debate over immigration policies continues, public sentiment remains a significant factor in shaping future policy decisions. Meanwhile, Perez highlighted operational challenges and defended current enforcement tactics. The growing disapproval among Americans indicates ongoing tension between federal agency operations and public opinion. The situation is still developing as both parties negotiate the partial government shutdown's resolution and address concerns about border security and immigration policies. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio defended the recent military operation that ousted Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro during a summit meeting with leaders from the Caribbean Community Bloc in St. Kitts and Nevis on Wednesday. Rubio stated that despite concerns raised by regional leaders, Venezuela is now better off since Maduro's capture last month. He highlighted progress made in the country following the U.S.-led takeover of Venezuela's oil sector. The secretary claimed that interim authorities have implemented significant reforms that were previously unimaginable. Caribbean leaders expressed reservations about the legality and impact of the military intervention on their region. Some questioned if recent strikes by the U.S. in Caribbean waters could be considered extrajudicial killings. This indicates regional unease with the Trump administration's aggressive tactics, and that's despite these concerns. Rubio emphasized the shared challenges between the United States and the Caribbean in areas such as crime and economic development. Rubio also addressed transnational criminal organizations as a significant threat to stability in the region, while acknowledging the role of U.S. weapons and arms trafficking issues. He proposed collaboration with Caribbean nations on energy and economic advancement initiatives, aiming to strengthen ties following the Venezuela operation. The situation remains under observation as regional leaders continue to navigate the shifting geopolitical landscape shaped by increased U.S. focus on Latin American affairs. Former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers will resign his academic positions at Harvard University as the institution reviews his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. The resignation comes after a Justice Department release of over 300 emails between Summers and Epstein from 2016 to 2019, revealing years of interaction that now face scrutiny. Summers, who has been on leave since November 2025, will step down at the end of the current academic year. His departure follows similar actions by other academics named in the documents. This reflects a broader investigation into Epstein's connections within various professional and educational circles. Harvard officials have stated that they are reviewing individuals mentioned in the Epstein files to determine appropriate actions. This development highlights growing concerns over relationships between high-profile figures and Jeffrey Epstein, impacting institutions across multiple sectors. As the review continues, Larry Summers' resignation underscores the significant implications of these associations for academic integrity and institutional reputation. The Trump administration has temporarily halted some Medicaid funding to Minnesota due to alleged fraud concerns, affecting $259 million in federal payments. Vice President J.D. Vance and Dr. Mame at Oz announced the decision Wednesday as part of a broader national effort to address public fund misuse. Vice President Vance and Dr. Mame at Oz cited specific cases involving daycare centers run by Somali residents and pandemic aid misappropriation. This includes a non-profit called Feeding Our Future accused of stealing $300 million in pandemic relief funds meant for school meals. The move follows allegations of widespread fraud within Minnesota's Medicaid system. The action has sparked concerns among state officials, with Governor Tim Walz's office not immediately responding to the announcement. This development may strain relations between the Trump administration and Minnesota's leadership, while potentially affecting thousands of beneficiaries who rely on Medicaid funding. Minnesota faces an ongoing federal crackdown on fraudulent activities. As part of President Donald Trump's National War on Fraud initiative announced in his recent State of the Union address, the situation remains under review by multiple federal agencies to ensure proper stewardship of public funds. President Donald Trump's nominee to lead the new National Fraud Enforcement Division at the Justice Department, Colleen McDonald, pledged non-partisan prosecutions during a confirmation hearing this week. The division is part of the administration's push to declare a war on fraud, particularly targeting allegations in Minnesota. McDonald's nomination comes as President Trump has declared a war on fraud following accusations that members of Minnesota's Somali community have stolen billions from federal programs. At his confirmation hearing, McDonald emphasized the importance of pursuing all cases based on facts and laws without political influence. The proposed National Fraud Enforcement Division is designed to address large-scale fraud. However, critics question its necessity given existing efforts by the Criminal Division. The new unit faces scrutiny over potential political interference, especially after Vice President J.D. Vance's announcement that he would lead the initiative. McDonald did not specify his reporting structure, leaving unclear whether he will report directly to the White House or the Deputy Attorney General. Colleen McDonald could immediately face challenges in recruiting prosecutors, as the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minnesota has seen significant resignations following high-profile incidents involving federal agents during immigration enforcement actions. Despite these hurdles, McDonald stated that much more work needs to be done to ensure taxpayer-funded programs are free from fraud. The situation remains under close watch as the confirmation process for Colleen McDonald continues and questions about political influence persist. Iranians are facing soaring food prices as tensions with the U.S. escalate, pushing many to the brink of economic hardship. Inflation has surpassed 46%, putting significant strain on lower-income households across the country. The devaluation of Iran's rial has played a major role in driving up costs for everyday items such as food and household goods. Since President Donald Trump's withdrawal from the nuclear deal in 2018, ongoing U.S. sanctions have exacerbated inflation and unemployment rates, which are particularly high among young people at around 20%. Recent protests highlight public dissatisfaction over economic conditions and political instability. The rial has depreciated significantly from about 32,000 to the dollar in 2015 to a staggering 1.65 million to the dollar as of late December 2025. This decline is further fueled by fears of potential military conflict between Iran and the U.S. Iran's government has begun distributing monthly payments of 10 million rials to some 70 million people to help with food expenses. However, this relief may not be sufficient in light of ongoing economic pressures and high inflation rates. The situation remains tense as both sides continue negotiations over Iran's nuclear program. Meanwhile, Iranians are bracing for further economic hardships amidst rising food prices and the looming threat of war.